One of the things I really dislike about games nowadays is this idea of loot boxes. It's gotta have a loot box. You've gotta work the game around the loot boxes. Make that nickel and dime the customer, especially on a single player game where it has no place whatsoever. And the FTC might actually agree with that. So, apparently, the Federal Trade Commission, the chairman, Joseph Simmons, on Tuesday said he would investigate video game loot boxes to ensure that children are being protected and parents are educated on the matter. Typically I don't like the whole, what about the children kind of mindset, especially when some of these games they shouldn't be playing to begin with. But then again, there are other games that are not rated M that have loot boxes. So, in a way, I kind of get where they're aiming at. I'm not sure what the ESRB rating is for something like FIFA, but it is rife with microtransactions, as well as just about every mobile game out there, which, of course, kids are going to have access to. But anyway, Simmons testified Tuesday before the Senate Commerce Subcommittee on the Consumer Protection, Product Safety, Insurance, and Data Security about the Commission's work. Following his testimony, a number of senators asked Simmons questions on an array of topics. Senator Maggie Hassan, who brought up the issue of loot boxes in video games earlier this year, asked the FTC to launch the investigations, and Simmons confirmed he would. So, let's just take a look at what actually was said, because there's video of it.
Earlier this year at the confirmation hearing for most of you, I discussed the possibility of the FTC examining the issue of children in the video game space. Specifically, we discussed loot boxes, which allow in-game purchases with real currency for surprise winnings, and most of you agreed that this is an area that could use additional oversight by the FTC. Loot boxes are now endemic in the video game industry and are present in everything from casual smartphone games to the newest high-budget video game releases. Loot boxes will represent a $50 billion industry by the year 2022, according to the latest research estimates. Children may be particularly susceptible to engaging with these in-game purchases, which are often considered integral components of video games. And just this month, Great Britain's Gambling Commission released a report finding that 30% of children have used loot boxes in video games. The report further found that this exposure may correlate with a rise in young problem gamblers in the United Kingdom. Belgium, the Netherlands, Japan, and other countries have all moved to regulate the use of loot boxes in video games, given this close link to gambling. So given the seriousness of this issue, I think it is in fact time for the FTC to investigate these mechanisms to ensure that children are being adequately protected and to educate parents about potential addiction or other negative impacts of these games. Would you commit to undertaking this project and keeping this committee informed about it?
Yes.
But yeah, it's nice to see, actually, instead of a senator or somebody attacking video games just for their mere existence of like an M rating, going, this shouldn't be around, and then me going, well, you shouldn't be letting your kids play Call of Duty. I mean, no offense, it's a mature rated title for a fucking reason. So you can't sit there and complain that kids are playing it when the parents who should be preventing that is letting it happen. Nor do the parents have any leeway to go and complain about it because it's too violent. There's too much blood. There's too much this, too much that, because they're the ones letting their kids play it. That's on them, not the video game companies. However, we do need help with loot boxes. And if that's the way we want to go with it, then I guess that's just the way it's going to go down. But during the exchange, Hassan noted that she believed the problem of loot boxes, which are sold for real cash in some games, most games, in fact every game that has a loot box can be bought with real cash, and how they do that, if you're unaware for some odd reason, is the loot box may be available for crystals only. Crystals can be gained passively by playing the game, and you may get 2, 3, 10, very little increments at a time, while the loot box costs 1,500 crystals, or you can spend $9.99 for 500 crystals. And that's where the real money for every loot box comes in. You can pay real money, for the in-game currency, and then the in-game currency in turn is used to buy the loot box. So if a loot box is 1,500, you can get 500 crystals for $10. You're looking at $30 for this loot box that doesn't give you a guarantee of anything of value. But anyway, in real cash in some games and packed with in-game mystery items continue to grow. Earlier this year, the confirmation hearing for most of you, I discussed the possibility of a FTC examining the issue of children in the video game space, she said, specifically with discussing loot boxes, which allow in-game purchases with real currency for surprise winnings, and most of you agree this is an area that could use additional oversight by the FTC. Loot boxes are now an epidemic in the video games, she continues, industry, and presented in everything from casual smartphone games to the newest high-end budget video game releases. Loot boxes will represent a $50 billion industry by the year 2022. According to the last research estimates, children may be particularly susceptible to engaging with these in-game purchases, which are often considerably integral components of video games. And if you need an example of that, look at Star Wars Battlefront. Battlefront had loot boxes. Everybody made a stink about it because of the way everything was being handled. They had to go back and redo everything to take the loot boxes out because the game was designed around the loot boxes. A AAA game designed around loot boxes for your consoles and PC. And then when they had to go and fix all of it, just to rebalance everything and to get stuff in there without the loot box system. But anyway, just this month, Great Britain Gambling Commission released a report finding that 30% of children have used loot boxes in video games. The report further found this exposure may correlate with a rise of young problem gamblers in the United Kingdom, Belgium, Netherlands, Japan, and have moved to regulate the use of loot boxes in video games, given this close link to gambling. And she is not wrong. Not wrong at all. And, seriously, they are building things around loot boxes. Even single-player games are built around loot boxes. What was the Lord of the Rings game? I can't remember which one that was. It was, the last one they recently did. Can't remember its name. But it had a multiplayer component to it, and loot boxes, and other things, and it essentially was a pay-to-win thing that had happened as a result. You want to be able to not get your butt kicked, you've got to pay for these transactions. But at the same time, these transactions are also limited. You could lose those things. But anyway, what's really astounding to me is the ESRB No. The Entertainment Software Association. Sorry. Anyway, their response to defending loot boxes, because I've heard it all. Video game companies need to use loot boxes to continue to gain profits because the budgets are so high, it's the only way they can break even and make a profit. Meanwhile, I've also seen people debunk that, and there's been plenty of titles out there who have been made on really tiny budgets that blow up and sell millions of copies within the first week, or if not days, that did not need loot boxes. So it's doable. The problem is, it feels like giant game companies, like EA, anyway, and others, want to half-ass their games nowadays. They can't give us a full product. Bethesda, looking at Fallout 76 right now, they throw things out in practically open beta or open alpha and claim it's a full game when it's not. And then they nickel and dime you from there. And these companies have been comfortable with doing this because people keep buying the product. But now, with the advent of social media and everything else, people are talking about it. People are getting out there and going look, this game has this about it. If you don't like that, don't buy it. And, with apparently the sales of Battlefield 5 being really, really down right now, I would say the gaming companies like EA and stuff are going to start feeling that kind of heat after a while if it continues to happen. But the Entertainment Software Association's defense of this is just, wow. I was expecting a defense on, we need this in order to break even kind of deal, but no, this is their defense. And we'll quote this: "Loot boxes are one way that players can enhance the experience." Listen to that. Enhance the experience that video games offer. Contrary to assertions, loot boxes are not gambling. They have no real-world value. Players always receive something that enhances their experience. Again, with the enhance the experience. And they are entirely optional to purchase. They could enhance the experience for those who choose to use them, but have no impact on those who do not. Now let's break this down for a second. If you're going to do cosmetic-only loot boxes, it sucks. Especially if you want to buy a particular skin, and you can't because you now have to roll on it. Overwatch. Anyway, or old Overwatch. I think they fixed it since then. But anyway, that's one thing. That really is a purchase that may enhance the experience for a particular player, but overall, it does nothing for the gameplay. It doesn't change anything, doesn't impact anybody else other than that guy's got a really cool looking skin, and I don't. But, let's go this. It, for one, doesn't really enhance the experience, but on a few cases it could. But, the contrary to assertion that loot boxes are not gambling, loot boxes are absolutely gambling. You're paying money, or a currency that you've bought with real money, for a chance to get something. I mentioned FIFA earlier. I think, what was the statistic? Less than 1% to roll in a loot box to get some of the best players in the game. That's a less than 1%. And that's all we know about it. They won't give us exact numbers. It's like you've got a 99.99999% chance of not getting some of the best things in the game, but if you want to keep trying, you're going to have to keep paying into the system in order to get it. That is gambling. When you don't know what you are going to get, and you have to roll the dice on a random roll after putting something of value, of real market value into said product, it is gambling. You put a quarter in the slot machine, it may or may not pay out to you. It's a gamble. You put $9.99 down on a loot box, you may or may not get that skin or that item that you were looking for because it's a gamble. It is absolutely gambling at that point. Anyway, they have no real world value. That one is just hilarious. If they have no real world value, then freaking take them out. Give them for free. Seriously, you're going to sit there and say they have no real world value? They have real world value. There are games out there who have gotten a lot of flack, like CSGO, for their skins, and their gambling scene with said skins that they gambled to get to begin with. So yes, they absolutely do have real world value to somebody. But if they don't, and you want to argue that part, remove them. Put everything into the damn game. How hard is that? If I'm going to go and fight this boss, I shouldn't, especially, if you're playing something like that you can repeat the process over again, like, I guess, Destiny. I don't know if Destiny has loot boxes. I'm sure it does. I don't play. But, you go into Destiny, you've run into this raid, and the item could drop from X guy, or X girl, or whatever monster it is. You have a chance of getting it, you just gotta keep running it until it finally drops. There might be a lockout, maybe you can only run it 4 times in an hour or something, I don't know. Or 4 times a day, or, like an MMO, a weekly lockout on, raids and stuff, so you don't keep running the same boss over and over again to get this item. And take it out of the loot box and put it on the person, so you can go kill them and get it. Or if it's a single-player game, put it in the freaking game somewhere. Something hidden that you can find. It's not unlike like an RPG back in the day, like Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger or anything like that, to have their best weapons hidden in the game that you've got to go find. You want to get Chrono's Rainbow Sword? That's going to require you to obtain the Rainbow Shell and do a few other things in order for somebody to make you the Rainbow Sword. You want to go find the Zodiac's final weapons in Final Fantasy, in one of the Final Fantasies? You've got to go and do some stuff. You want to get the final weapons for everybody in FF10? Prepare for some insane secondary missions that you're going to have to do, including dodging 200 lightning bolts in a row with no counter, so you don't know how many you've done or not. That was something I really enjoyed doing. Take it out of the loot boxes, put it back in the game as an unlockable. How hard is that? It used to happen beforehand. It gave us more complete games and people were more satisfied with their games. But anyway, and then the last part here, it is entirely optional. No, it is not entirely optional, especially when you build a game around the loot box system, like for instance Battlefront. Battlefront 2 was built around it. That's why I mentioned it earlier. They built literally around this loot box mechanic, and then everybody got upset about it when they figured it out that that's what was going on. You have items only in the loot box that give massive things to other players. For instance, I don't remember the name of what it was, but it was like a skill card for like Boba Fett or something, that while you were in the air for like the next 3 seconds or something, you were like invincible while using your jetpack in the air. That card is only gotten through the loot box system, which on one hand absolutely affects other players in the game, because they may not have access to it because they've not paid into the loot box system, and they have no way of getting access to it unless they pay into said loot box system. And everything else came through the loot box system. And you know, they're talking about how, you know, you always get something of value and all this other stuff. No, you don't. I mean, heck, I want to say it was Overwatch who had a very, very bad system of duplicates at one point in time. You would get duplicate after duplicate after duplicate after duplicate of something you already have. That's another crummy thing about loot boxes. You may be trying to get something, but then you get all these freaking duplicates. And there's nothing for you to do with them but to scrap them for whatever they're scrappable for, because chances are the game's giving you a way to do that, to then also craft things. But, you know, you're going to get so negligible, you know, such tiny amounts, like, you know, in order to craft this particular item, it needs, I don't know, 2,000 of this scrapped dust that can only be gotten by scrapping items. And then when you scrap an item, you get like 2. Which is why they throw the duplicates at you. So you will scrap more of those to get towards that, while also still paying into their system, in order for that one item you absolutely want. But anyway, this essentially is one small step forward when it comes to loot boxes and doing something about it. I mean, as it is right now, EA is apparently currently breaking the law in Belgium because they have outlawed them and they're still using them. But if other countries, especially larger countries, start following suit, like the US or the EU or anything like that, eventually companies like EA are not going to be able to afford to break said law. They're going to have to do something about the system in general, which then of course also leads to the bad side to all this. Loot boxes, that's the devil we know. But what's the devil we don't? Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Till then, I will talk to you later. See ya.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment, smash that like button, and always subscribe for more. And of course, there are other videos floating around somewhere on the screen, so click one of those and see if you can find something that suits your fancy. Till then, I'll see you later. Bye.